This video is about how legislative drafters in drafting offices across the Commonwealth can make maps of the logical structure of their legislation to help them find their way around it, to help their instructing officers find their way around it, and eventually to help the users of the legislation find their way around it. So this is a map. I'll show you in a moment how it works interactively, but I'll also show you how we get there. First of all, though, just to explain who I am, my name is Matthew Waddington, and I work at the Legislative Drafting Office in Jersey in the Channel Islands, between the UK and France. And we have a computer readable legislation project, and over the first half of 2025 we've been working with the Singapore Management University on their L4 computing language that's designed to be able to help people find their way around the logic of legislation, but also to do much more. So going back to this piece of mapping, what is this about? Well, it's about an imaginary legislative draft. If you were drafting something, it would not be this simple, normally speaking, but we're using this as an illustration. It's not a real piece of legislation. So we have a provision fairly typical that says it poses a duty. It says a farmer must feed an animal, and then that duty is imposed subject to conditions. First, that the animal is either a livestock animal or a working dog, and second, that the farmer is not exempt. So we're not going into what those are at the moment, but you'll see I'm thinking that the drafter is going to be putting in a definition of livestock animal as meaning a pig or a cow, and a definition of a working dog, meaning a dog that works as a sheepdog or is registered under this act, presumably. So let's just go back to the mapped version of that. The idea with these maps, it's not quite a flowchart, because legislation isn't about a process. Legislation is about working out whether the legal effect that you've created does or doesn't apply given the conditions you've imposed on it. So the legal effect that you've created there would be that under section 8.1, the farmer must feed the animal. And at the moment, it's evaluating that as unknown. We don't know whether the farmer must feed the animal. The point is that you need to get across this path, and you can either go through the route of the livestock animal or through the route of the working dog, but you also have to have the farmer not being exempt. So the way that this works, if I click once on one of these boxes, it turns green. So that means the animal is a livestock animal. It's gone green as a tick. If nothing has still happened up here where it says unknown, but if I now click on the farmer is exempt, that's gone green to mean that the farmer is exempt. But if you remember, the condition was that the farmer is not exempt. So this not with these little angle brackets is surrounding this box to show that it's not. And now the evaluation has changed to false. So this means it's not true that under section 8.1 the farmers feed the animal if the animal is a livestock animal but the farmer's exempt. If I click again, you'll see it goes red with an X to show I'm now saying it's not true that the farmer's exempt. And now it's evaluating to true because the animal is a livestock animal and the farmer's not exempt. That means under section 8.1 the farmer must feed the animal. So if I put this to false, it's now unknown because I still haven't done anything with this box down at the bottom, the working dog one. So if I answer that, yes, it is a working dog, it now evaluates to true. If I turn it red, it now evaluates to false. If I turn this back to the farmer is exempt, it goes to false, whatever the answers to these are. So this helps you see that obviously you would normally be using something more complicated than this, but you can see that this will enable particularly your instructing officers or anyone who's checking your draft to check that the intended consequences do come out the way they were expected to. It's not talking about what farmer means or what exempt means or what an animal means so far. What it's doing is checking the relationship between the different provisions. And one way of looking at that is that there are paths through. So there are two paths given the draft that you've written. There are two paths to achieve the farmer must feed the animal. One is under section 8.2, the animal's a livestock animal and it's not true that the farmer's exempt. The other one is under section 8.3, the animal's a working dog and it's not true that the farmer's exempt. So that is essentially how we can represent that kind of relationship between those provisions. Where it gets more interesting is the definitions. If you remember, we had a definition of a livestock animal and a definition of a working dog. So the definition of a livestock animal was that it was a pig or a cow. So that means now we've unpacked that definition to show there are now three paths, either a pig or a cow or a working dog. And in each of those cases, the farmer's got to be exempt. But that is a way of representing that definition of a livestock animal as a pig or a cow and how that affects the logical structure. But we also had a definition for a working dog. So again, there's a plus little box here to indicate that. Unfold to definition, it says. If I press that, it now draws out the animal is a dog and the dog works as a sheepdog and the dog is registered. So we're taking this purely from the wording of the draft. We're not trying to explain it or alter it in any way. We're just rearranging the actual wording of the draft. So now we're back to unknown, everything's white. If we say the animal is a dog and the farmer's exempt, well, if the farmer's exempt, it's not true that the farmer has to feed the animal. So we change that back to the farmer's not exempt. It's still unknown because we haven't answered whether it's a pig or a cow. Our legislation has not said that a dog is not a cow and a dog is not a pig and a pig is not a cow. Those are things that human beings know by their own common sense, that we as drafters have left the human beings to work out for themselves. I could go through this and say it is a cow as well as being a dog. As a human being, I know that's nonsense. The logical structure of the legislation that I've drafted doesn't demand that that be nonsense, and so the computer doesn't recognize it. So here, the animal to be a working dog, the animal's got to be a dog, it's got to work as a sheepdog and be registered. And now we have it come out as true. The farmer must feed the animal because the farmer's not exempt. It is a dog, works as a sheepdog, and it's registered. So that shows you how you can get provisions that feed into each other represented in a user-friendly visual way to be able to illustrate the logic and to be able to check the logic. So if I click on paths again, I've got these three paths. The one I've gone on there is this one for the dog, but these are the other two paths. So, how do we get there is the question. We think that this will be useful for legislative drafters, but we want legislative drafters to be able to produce this themselves without having to become coders, programmers, experts in whatever. What you are experts in as legislative drafters is the logic of legislative drafting. You already know about that. You know the conventions that we use. You know the way that we use if and or. You're careful with how you use not, and so on. So let's go back to the draft. We need to have a reasonably user-friendly way for drafters to get that into the L4 format, which is what feeds this visualizer. The L4 format is this. So it says decide under section 8.1, the farmer must feed the animal if under section 8.2, the animal is a livestock animal, or under section 8.3, the animal is a working dog, and not the farmer is exempt. So you'll see it looks quite similar to a draft in that it's using the same sorts of if, and, or, and not, and it's using paragraphing, and it's using indenting of the paragraphing. So the condition about the farmer and the condition about the animal are represented at different levels of indenting to show they're joined by the and, to show that the two ones about the animal are joined by the or. It's not the animal's livestock animal or it's a working dog and the farmer's exempt. So that's how we distinguish between that in our drafting, by using the by taking A and B, A for the animal, B for the farmer, and then breaking A up further into more indented paragraphs there. So nevertheless, that's still fairly technical. How would we get to there? Also, the L4 wants these assume statements, which I'll come back to. But just thinking about how we get to that point, well, we take the text of the draft and we rearrange it as an if-then, a set of if-then statements. So this first one is paragraph 1, subsection 1 rather, for people who use sections. This second one is subsection 2, this third one is subsection 3. So what we've done is turn each of these things into a full sentence. So these are we've identified the effect. The effect is a farmer must feed an animal. In any draft provision, what you're doing, in the Commonwealth anyway, is you're creating a legal effect. That legal effect might be an obligation, a prohibition, a permission, a power, a definition, or some other counts as provision or whatever. But it's a legal effect that you're creating. And then you'll usually, sometimes those legal effects stand alone. Most times the legal effect is only created if there are conditions met. So you're identifying if then, if all these conditions are met, then the farmer must feed the animal. So you're recasting that as if, but for each condition and for the effect, you're making sure they're expressed as a whole sentence. So the animal is a livestock animal is, you know, as a drafter, and most lawyers know, when you read this, the animal is a livestock animal or a working dog. That's equivalent to the animal is a livestock animal or the animal is a working dog. Well, that's what we've got here. But the difference, a working dog is not a sentence, So we're only talking about grammar, use of English in the ordinary way that drafters use English, but it happens to reflect how propositional logic works, but you don't need to know about propositional logic. But the point is, it needs to be a complete sentence, or as you might say, an independent clause. So the animal is a working dog is word for word taken out of the draft, but skipping the livestock animal part. The farmer must feed the animal is taken word for word out of the draft as well, except that we've changed it into the, because we know which farmer we're talking about now. The definitions, we've not tried to capture the bit about the scope of the definition in this act or in subsection 1. Livestock animal means a pig or a cow. We've recast that as if then. So if, and again we've made full sentences, if the animal is a pig or the animal is a cow, then under section 8.2 the animal is a livestock animal. So if it means that, then the animal is that. Similarly, with the working dog definition, it says working dog means, and then it's not a dash straight away, it means a dog that, dash, and then it breaks out into the sub-paragraphs, works as a sheepdog and is registered. So the same thing there again, we have to have complete sentences. So we recast that as if the animal is a dog and the dog works as a sheepdog and the dog is registered. So it's the animal is a dog we're taking from here, but and means a dog, and then the dog works as a sheepdog and the dog is registered. Once we've got that, because these sentences, the conclusions to these two are the same as the conditions for these two. So under section, sorry, it's under, we put in where they are as well. Under section 8.2, the animal is a livestock animal. That, it feeds that. And then under section 8.3, the animal is a working dog. That feeds this condition. So this is the main if-then statement to get to whether the farmer must feed the animal. And these are the two definitions that feed in. What we then need to do is to turn that into actual L4, but that is a mechanical exercise. This is the actual L4. What the L4 itself does, it says assume the farmer is exempt is Boolean. Now that we're hoping to replace the word Boolean by just true false. The point about your draft is that you know that you have to draft each of the conditions in a way that a court can decide yes or no about them. They either are met or they're not. I often give the example, reasonable force is extremely vague. If the law says a person has a defence against a charge of assault if they use reasonable force, then the jury has to come back saying guilty or innocent. They can't come back saying, oh dear, life is very complicated. It's a matter of degree. It's all very vague. What's reasonable? They have to decide this person did use reasonable force or they did not use reasonable force. So all of your conditions are yes, no conditions in that sense, true, false. So L4 needs to be told that expressly, but as I say, we can do this mechanically, and we can do it. What we've come up with, one of my colleagues, Kate Hanna, is a way of doing this using word macros. So once you have gone from the draft itself to this if-then version. And as long as you put in, let me just show you the spaces, you put in 2 spaces for 1 indent and 4 spaces for 2 indents. But as long as you've done that, then you don't need artificial intelligence. You don't need to understand how it works necessarily. You can use this macro to produce a separate document that has exactly what we've just been looking at. So it works out that the definitions are feeding the main conditions, so it doesn't repeat them. It gets everything right. You take all that, you copy it. You can now paste that. You can go to the L4 editor that Legalese, who are the company behind the work that was being done at Singapore Management University, who've now taken it over. You go to their website, jl4legalese.com. You pick empty in order to be able to put your own material in. And I now paste that exactly as it was. And you'll see that it's put in this visualize and simplify as visualize before each of these decides. So the decides have replaced the then part of the if then. The assumes have gone in. So I can now press visualize, and I can do some adjusting of the screen so that you can see better. And that will give you the same map that we were just looking at. Just expand that for you. So there is the map that we were looking at. And because it's got all 3 of these elements, it's got the plus, the unfold to definition bits I was just showing you just now. And you can pull this all the way over here. You can expand it with this. You can move them around to represent it more clearly. So there's that route is the livestock route. This route is the working dog route. And you can ask it to list the paths. So it's the same idea, but that has been generated automatically. So all that I needed to do as the drafter was produce that initial if-then version. And that will take a little bit of getting used to, but we don't think it is beyond most legislative drafters, because we do think that it is based on what you're doing when you're drafting the thing yourself anyway. You're thinking about the animal is a working dog. Have I defined a working dog? Oh, yes, I have. It's a dog that works as a sheepdog and is registered, and so on. So we think if you can do this, then you can automatically, at the moment through a 2-step process, but you can automatically convert it into this, which is interactive and does produce results and can be used. So that's what we're hoping to talk to legislative drafters across the Commonwealth about, and to get people to try it out for themselves. jl4legalese.com is the website. There are various examples already there. There's one for the British Nationality Act, this one. But these are using the full strengths of L4, the full abilities of L4. So these have much more sophisticated L4 programming in them that we don't, at this stage, we're not suggesting that drafters should be looking at. So what you do when you get to this website is you press empty, and then you can put what you want in there. So I hope that makes sense, and I hope it will be useful to people. There will be more information up on our website for the project, but I look forward to talking to people about it. Thank you. Goodbye.